For more on India's rape crisis, let's turn to our panel. Joining us from Paris is journalist Noopur Tiwari. She's the founder of Smashboard, a new feminist social network for survivors of sexual and sexist violence. Priyali Sur is a gender specialist and documentary filmmaker. She's right here with us in our studio in Washington, D.C. And joining us from New Delhi is gender equality activist Shruti Kapoor. She founded Safety, focusing on educating and empowering women and girls in India to protect themselves from violence. Thank you to all of you for joining us. Shruti Kapoor, let me start with you. There were more than 32,000 rapes in India in 2017, and that's believed to be a very conservative figure because many of the victims don't report rape because of the stigma attached to it. There's also a very low conviction rate for those rapists who are charged and who do go to court. When we look at all of this, is Indian society indifferent to the large number of women who are sexually assaulted in the country?
I don't think so that the Indian society is indifferent. I believe that the anger and the frustration that we are seeing after each and every rape or a gang rape case is a testimonial to the fact that the people are frustrated, they're angry, they are fed up of these rape cases, and that they are unable to find quick solutions or even justice to these rape cases. So to say that they're indifferent is not the right word. Unfortunately, they are tied by the structural barriers that exist within our system. So whether it's the legal system, the judicial system, or just even filing something as simple as an FIR. So the process itself of getting any form of justice, of reporting a crime, is a frustrating, is a slow process, and a lot of victims experience that when they plan to report and if they plan to ever come out, with their incidences. So there is definitely a lot of anger and frustration that I'm seeing now and have seen in the past also when it comes to these cases.
Right, Shruti, as you say, the process of reporting these crimes is very slow, it's very frustrating, there's a lot of anger. What can be done to change that?
I think it's there is no one right answer. It's a multi-sectoral problem. So starting with the police needs to be more gender sensitized. When a victim goes to a police station, they need to file the report right away. Oftentimes we see that the police dissuades the family or the victim from filing an FIR information. They'll delay the process of actually writing the FIR, which puts a fear in the minds of the victim or even discourages them from approaching the police. Once an FIR is written, then there's a medical process of collecting the evidence of the victim, going through the medical procedure to collect the DNA, and that in itself is not standardized in a country like India. It differs from state to state. Once that is done and you reach the court stage, as you can see, it takes years and years to even get a court date in these cases. So it's really a long and exhaustive process for a victim to get any form of justice.
Priyali Sur, there was a horrific case in India recently where a doctor was raped and murdered. She was killed. There have been widespread protests in India over that. Let's listen to one of the protesters. Let's watch this.
Men rape and then run away, and the judicial system keeps running the way it does. 4 or 5 years pass and nobody bothers to do anything. What's the solution? If you're quiet today, if the Prime Minister and his women ministers are quiet, and if the system, society and the government don't speak up, who will take action?
Why is this not a top priority for Indian authorities?
And I think the voices that we are hearing on the street and the voice that we just played out are very symbolic of the fact that we, the women of India, we are tired of being assaulted, we're tired of being abused, we're tired of being protesting on the streets, we're tired of having these debates in the newsrooms, and ultimately asking for what we really deserve, our basic human right, which is our right to life, safety and dignity. Now, why is the government or why are the authorities of India not taking care of it? The fact that the people in positions of power, people who are the lawmakers, are failing to take any action on the laws which are already there. We talk about 2012, the gang rape, which actually shook the entire country. After that, a committee was set up, and the committee came out with strong recommendations, and good stringent laws came into place. But consecutive governments have failed to implement the laws. Shruti just mentioned that the police is not sensitized enough. Every time a woman goes to make a complaint, even in the recent Hyderabad case, when the parents went to make a complaint, the police said that maybe your daughter is gone out with her boyfriend. There is a specific law and there's a recommendation that says that when there is dereliction of duty by the police has to be accountable, they have to be punished. But how many of our policemen, how many of our police forces who have failed to carry out their duty have been punished? So yes, we are tired of lip service. We want to see action, and ultimately the government of India, of which many parliamentarians are themselves accused of sexual violence and are misogynistic, they have to be the ones taking action and be accountable.
Noopur Tiwari, what is your view on what is going on in India right now? We hear about these, we hear about the high-profile cases, but this is going on almost continuously in India. And as we've just heard, the police are not implementing the laws that were passed in 2012. There seems to be a bit of apathy on the part of the authorities to take action against perpetrators of rape.
Anand, I think the problem is, far greater than apathy or the failure of the police or the failure of, institutions or the government. Everything that Shruti and Priyali said holds. But the thing is that the layers of violence and what we are hearing about it are many. But my biggest problem is that the only time we have these discussions, in mainstream media or elsewhere, is when we hear of a certain kind of case. This is one of the most important things about the selective outrage that we have about rape. Why is it that we are, the four of us who are discussing this subject are talking about this now? We are talking about this now because there was a woman who was a middle-class woman who was brutally raped and murdered. And then those 4 men were killed extrajudicially by the police. Now, whether we'd like to admit it or not, the fact of the matter is that this is a very sensational rape story.
Right.
The gory details, the demands for the hanging of rapists, all these problems are actually not highlighting the fact that most of the rapes that occur, about more than 97% everywhere around the world, are not of this kind, which doesn't mean that this rape isn't a serious one, which doesn't mean that the politicians who've come out and said that it's a good thing that those 4 men were killed without having got the right to trial. All of this is chaos.
Okay, Noopur, I just want to stop you there because
accountability rests with the government of India, where lynchings are becoming more and more common.
Right.
So unlike...
We do have an explanation from the police chief on these killings that you talk about, the 4 accused men who were shot and killed. Let's listen to the police chief and I'll get back to you.
As the party approached this area today early hours, all the 4 accused got together. They started attacking the police party with stones, sticks and other materials. And also they snatched away weapons from our 2 officers and started firing. So even though our officers maintained restraint and asked them to surrender, but without listening to us, they continued to fire and continued to attack us. So again our people started in retaliation. In that retaliation, the 4 accused got killed.
Listening to the police chief there, Noopur, are people in India buying this explanation?
Not really, but the fact of the matter is that there's an overwhelming number of people who are saying that it's a good thing that's happened.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is very, very concerning. Because these 4 men were suspects. Remember that they were not people who had been convicted by any courts. Also, this kind of encounter, so to speak, a lot of people know in India that these are extrajudicial killings, that, a lot of the story that the policemen tell are not very believable or convincing. And also, the same police officers that are talking about these killings have also earlier been involved in another killing of rapes of suspects who had actually thrown acid on a woman. So there is this kind of building of, these heroes in the police who
Yeah.
take the law into their own hands and, you know, just get rid of the suspects, so to speak. But this
Right.
is obviously not a solution. It is so far from all of the problems that we have today, you know, and especially rape survivors, the harm that is caused, the trauma that is caused,
Yeah.
not only to survivors, but also to the community.
Yeah, Shruti Kapoor, I want to get your response to some of what has been happening in India, particularly the killing of these 4 accused men. Let's listen to some of the reaction from the Indian public on that. Let's watch.
We're all glad today. She was the daughter of our society, so it feels that all of us got justice. From now on, whenever someone even thinks of doing such a thing, they will think 10 times before actually doing it.
What the police have done is an act of courage. The gang rape in Hyderabad made the whole country ashamed. This was justice. It relieved the hearts of 1.2 billion Indians. People may interpret it in any way with respect to the law, but it was a good thing.
As a common citizen, I am feeling happy that this was the end we all wanted for them. But this end was supposed to be through the legal system, and it should have been happened through proper channels.
Shruti, listening to some of those comments there, have Indians lost faith in the judicial system? And does this run the risk of people taking the law into their own hands?
Yes, you're right that this form of justice is, there is no doubt that it is not the right form of justice. It is not like, it's not going to fix the root cause of, you know, why crimes against women and girls have been happening. It is speedy to say, yes,
Yeah.
but the police taking action, taking the law in their own hands is not the right way to go about it, absolutely.
You want to say something?
I want to talk about Hyderabad because I have 2 nieces who are growing up there, who are adolescents, and they take almost that same route on which this 23-year-old was
Right.
there. And so I was talking to my family, and they expressed the same sentiments of many others in the country who feel that justice has finally been done. So encounter killings are no way in how justice should be done.
So this is
Because
not
every-
isolated. This has happened before.
Especially the Telangana police has been known to carry out this. But again, having said all of that, however heinous the crime is, everybody deserves a fair legal trial.
Right.
But ultimately what's happening is that the citizens of India are left to feel that there is going to be no action taken in the proper legal course. So if at all they need any kind of action and justice, then this is turning out to be the only way for them, and which is a very dangerous thing to happen.
If I can just say one thing, while we are
please.
talking about the problems that are happening, the problems of the large number of rapes in India, as you said in the beginning of the show,
Yeah.
I just want to say that we have to be very cautious with putting out this idea there. Please remember that the number of reported and unreported cases in the US are just as high, if not higher. Of course,
Yeah.
India has its own set of problems. But by reducing this to a sensational story of a country going down the drain is not the story, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, there are lynchings happening. Yes, we do have a government that encourages this kind of a rhetoric. These problems are there, but these are not specific problems to India. I mean, look at what happened in the Central Park joggers case in 1989, and now there's a series about it as well.
Yeah.
There are certain cases that are talked about because there are middle-class Indian women involved. There are upper-caste women who get raped and mutilated. But these are not the only women that are getting raped, and this is not the only discussion. Our discussions around rape are questioning about what happening is wrong.
Yeah.
Today we should be asking as to why people are praising this extrajudicial killing. That's because we are living in rape culture.
Yeah.
And this is not just in India, it's everywhere else. And the
Right.
criminal justice system nowhere has answers for rape victims. We are not focusing on the survivors here.
Yeah.
None of our questions over here are about survivors. They're all about people who have not yet been raped and who are paranoid that their daughters or they themselves will one day probably be raped and mutilated. But there are tons of women who are living with trauma today, who have not been mutilated, who are not dead. They're living survivors. And our discussions are just not apt enough, they're not adapted to addressing those questions, and that's why the rape problem will not be solved. Not so easily and not so soon.
Right, you raise a good point there. This is a phenomenon that is not just happening in one country or one region. It happens throughout the world, as we are fully aware. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That's it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu. Thanks for watching.